Hi there. In this video I'm playing Rifle Mechanist for the first time in my life. I'm doing cannons at Sabitha, which obviously negatively impacts my DPS. Still, you can see that my damage output is quite high despite not having alacrity for most of the fight. Why is that? It is pretty simple actually. The mech is doing a large chunk of the work. No matter what I am doing, the mech always does a super clean rotation and contributes a large amount of DPS. The most common argument used when pointing out the ridiculous output of a mech is people posting clips of going AFK on the build. But this is an easily attackable argument because you can point out that the DPS they do while going AFK is not impressive in the slightest, and a good player can always beat it. In my opinion, that misses the actual point here. If you do a full rotation on the Mechanist, as I'm trying to do in this video, no matter how skilled you are at the game, no matter how skilled you are at Mechanist, you will get better results on a Mechanist than you would get on your main character, on your main build. And that is the problem with it. Right now, my strongest DPS class is my Condition Virtuoso. There is no way that I, while on cannon duty, without alacrity, would ever do that kind of damage on a Condition Virtuoso. I can imagine I could maybe DPS raise it when I don't have to do mechanics and can stay at the boss. But I'm the literal Condition Virtuoso benchmark, so beating up a target dummy is what I have spent more time doing than 99.9% of the raid community. So I hope that I would out DPS a mechanist playing for the first time at the boss, right? So the point here is, even though I know what I'm doing on this other class, it will probably be correct for me going forward to play Rifle Mechanist instead, because the Rifle Mechanist will outperform in this scenario where I have to do the cannons, and it will outperform on other bosses as soon as I get to do a mechanic and I need to move away from the golem rotation. And this is not just true for me, it's true for basically everyone playing the game. Whatever your skill level and whatever class you otherwise main, you would be better off playing Rifle Mechanist. There's one exception, and that is organized speedrunning, but let's not make that the focus of this discussion. I think this is a balance issue. I know that some people think that game balance is not that important since this is a cooperative game mode. So you're not really playing against each other, and thus balance is not important. However, for my personal enjoyment, it is important that I know there is an advantage to playing on a familiar class I like to play and have spent hundreds of hours on. While Rifle Mechanist exists in its current form, this is unfortunately not the case. If I want a safer raid clear with higher DPS, I should play Rifle Mechanist. It's objectively the correct choice for me to do that on like 15 out of 21 raid bosses. And the rest of the bosses are like Mirage bosses. This needs to be changed. Right now, every fourth player in each raid group is playing the class. The recording here has 3 mechanists. Okay, I'm one of them, but it still has 2 other mechanists. So how could we change it? Let me be clear here. I don't think that Rifle Mechanist is too strong in a golem fight. It does like 36k, 37k DPS. To me, that's completely acceptable damage output when comparing it to other classes. Like Power Soul Beast does 38k. Is that also a problem? No. Here, the problem is how the damage translates to a real fight. Fight mechanics usually reduce the damage you do in a fight. However, the mech is a very reliable source of DPS, no matter what happens in the fight. So my approach to changing Mechanist and toning down its real fight performance would be like this. remove some damage from the mech itself, let's say 3000 DPS. This means the mech goes from 13k to 10k, by the way. So it is still doing a lot of damage. It's easily twice or three times as strong as a ranger pet, for example. Then we add those 3000 DPS back into the player portion of the Mechanist, preferably without touching core traits, because I think Holo and Scrapper are both in a decent spot right now, and those don't need buffs anymore. And one way to do this without touching core traits would be to reduce the stat conversion to the mech while buffing up a utility like the Force Signet, but only for the player. Or we could make a minor trait, give the Mechanist player some bonus damage while the mech is alive, for example, to encourage this fantasy where you're stronger while the mech is around you, but it's actually you who has to input the damage. This way, a good Mechanist player will still see similar numbers in a very organized fights, because in a very organized fight, because as I said, it's not problematic there when you have like planned out your rotation and everything on other classes. You can keep up and beat a Mechanist. But it is not going to be the best DPS option for every player in every scenario outside of this speedrunning environment. So that's just my opinion. I hope to hear yours on Mechanist. How would you change it? Um, there's just one argument I'm a bit tired of having, and that's like the attitude that a nerf like this would just push newer players out of the raid content and they couldn't clear anymore. I'm sure like new mech players could still clear raid content even if they did in practice like 1k or 2k DPS less, because that would be what's happening if you remove 3k from the mech and add 3k back to the player. Like even if you play the mech then poorly, you lose like 1k or 2k. So I'm not talking about destroying this build or anything like that. It's just about like reducing the guaranteed damage slightly. So I'm sure if you're a new player getting into raids on this build, even if it was slightly weaker, you probably wouldn't notice much of that anyway. So I think there can be easy builds, there should be easy builds. They just shouldn't take over the meta like this one does, to a point where even if you're the benchmark of a class in terms of gameplay, you would do more on just playing Mechanist for the first time. Because, let me repeat that, going forward, I now know that it is always worse DPS for me to play anything other than Rifle Mechanist, even though I have spent zero amount of time preparing this build. And that's just not acceptable balance right now, and I really hope ArenaNet takes some steps to reduce the damage in the next update. Anyway, that's it from me. Thanks for watching and have a great day.